Welcome to the show. My name is Karen Holton. I am an ET experiencer and ambassador, an ascension coach, a direct channel, a shamanic guide, and I'm the host of Aliens and Astrology. Be sure to check out more of my unique content on my website, www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com, and my YouTube, Odyssey, and Telegram channels, Karen Holton TV. I can also be found on the Forbidden Knowledge News Network, www.forbiddenknowledge.news. My paranormal experiences have taught me to replace my beliefs with working theories, which evolve over time. My co-host is Dave Petrella, and although we hold two different viewpoints, we both see things from the same broad perspective, and we are both passionate about the ascension process.
Hi, I'm Dave Petrella. I'm an astrologer, biologist, spiritual guide, and Oak Island theorist. You can find me on Facebook and YouTube at Dave Petrella, and on Instagram at Dave Petrella12. Please feel free to send me an email through my YouTube page. I'm happy to join Karen in our search for truth. We can find the answers we're looking for about health, science, extraterrestrial intelligence, and many other related topics. We're glad to have you join us today for the show.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to our very first show of Aliens and Astrology. As you know by now, my name is Karen Holton and my co-host is Dave Petrella. And we thought we'd start things off today talking about our journey. How did we get to this point? Why did we start this show? What do we plan to offer people? And what are our intentions? And so Dave's on the road right now doing research. So I'm hoping we're going to do an episode where we're going to cover where his research has led him and, more information about that. And we've got some other great stuff coming up for you. But for today, I'm going to talk a little bit about my journey. And I do not expect you all to believe every word I say. I actually appreciate very much you hearing what I have to say about my journey, because you could have a journey similar or different or completely different, and it's all valid and it's all important because it all brings us to a point where we're becoming the change we want to see in the world. And I have found this is just very powerful for us to do. So starting with myself, I guess basically I live in Canada. I'm a Canadian, and I was born into a working class family. But my due to intergenerational extraterrestrial contact and psychic experiences, my grandmother, she was very open about her experiences, but my mother, not so much. It kind of terrified her. She really wanted to and did buy into the three-dimensional reality as it's presented within the construct. And she didn't want to talk about or acknowledge that anything else existed. So I was having paranormal experiences. I didn't know exactly who I was having these experiences with, because I was just getting spontaneous knowings, messages. I wasn't hearing voices or anything like that. It just came to me in abstract symbols, concepts, thoughts, even things that were quite difficult to put into English, especially as a child. So I thought, well, I thought everybody had these experiences. I didn't understand that, I was pretty much the only one in my family and in my community. So I started going to churches because I thought, well, this has to do with God. I knew it was a very good thing that I was experiencing. And I thought, well, this has to do with God. So I better go to churches and find out, what God's plan is for me. And I started going to different churches, and it was always the same thing. They said that I shouldn't talk about my paranormal experiences, that they're the work of the devil, that, it would bring harm to me, that I could lose my soul, all this kind of scary stuff. But the truth of the matter is, I knew that wasn't true. I also kind of didn't 100% trust the churches, because every church I went to, and I actually, right up until my adult life, tried quite a few different religions. And they all said they were the only ones that represented God, their interpretation, each individual denomination of the Christian religion that I went and looked into, and a few even offbeat religions that I looked into. They all said they have the only understanding of the Bible. Everybody else is wrong. They have the only interpretation of God. Everybody else is wrong. And only by doing what I was told, by being obedient and subservient, especially amongst the fundamentalist Christian religions, would I have a chance of surviving. And so I became really afraid of death, and I shut down that part of my awareness. I just kind of tried to ignore it, didn't follow, my body sensations. When I communicate with other beings, it's not just symbols and concepts that I see in my mind's eye. It's also body sensations. I get actual feelings. And the feelings that I get from my communication with these beings was always very good. But I put it away, and I started listening to people within the construct, because we're taught that it's very important to go to external experts. So for your health, you would never want to tackle that on your own. You want to go see a doctor or a medical specialist. For politics, we're not supposed to think too much about that. We're supposed to trust the politicians, and that the politicians are there for our best interest. And on and on and on it went. Religions, et cetera, everything. We're supposed to go to an expert. And then, of course, the family that I was raised in, my mother and father, although they thought very differently, actually, my mother and my stepfather, although they saw the world two very different ways, they never came together and formed their own kind of conscious reality, but they both were set themselves as experts, and that we as their offspring knew nothing, and that we could only do well if we went to them for advice. And of course, their thinking was very entrenched in 1940s and 1950s ways of thinking and being. So anyway, what happened was, throughout my life, I tried very hard to be the best person I could be. I also believe that God, at least as the churches claim God is, was everything and everywhere. And even to this day, I kind of do think that outside of the construct, there is another reality that has consciousness. I'm going to call it universal consciousness, and that it is everywhere and it does know everything. So why try to be a fake person when I should be authentic to myself and authentic to the experiences that I'm perceiving in my own life? So anyway, things basically didn't go very well for me. All this time going to religions, I learned a lot. I read the Bible at least 3 times, so I know what it says, I know what it doesn't say. But I never really found the relief that I needed. And I ended up really messing up my life because I never went inside. I never listened to what my internal guidance system was telling me. And so it wasn't until I had just a huge, horrible experience in my life. It was very traumatic. And at that point, I was contacted by an angelic presence. And my angelic presence is really what opened me up to a spiritual life that included me and my internal resources, and the guidance and the love that I've received has been amazing. Then later on, I actually had a 3-month, and that's Earth time 3 months, because time is very different when we're off world. And I had an experience where I was transported to a very large, what we would call a mothership. I don't know where this ship really is. I don't even know if it's within our galaxy, but I had so much learning and so many amazing experiences that I was able to really get a sense of how other beings do things very differently. So these beings are actually what I would consider our next stage of evolution. So they're at our next stage of health, wellness, psychology, spirituality in every way. They look very much like humans, although they are a diverse group. So what happened is, the sort of story is, the ancestors of this group that I had my extraterrestrial experiences with, they originally did things the way we hear in our solar system about the Greys and the reptilians and the different kinds of beings that visit planet Earth. And I, by the way, have no experience with any of that. So I can't say this is true, this isn't, I don't know. And their experiences, the Earth people that report on these experiences, they're just about as far out as my own experiences. So who am I to judge? But the group that I was involved with, they used to do things that way, where they would try to, although they are not allowed to interfere with, they did try to do things like raise the frequency and elevate the spirituality of groups on Earth. But what always happens is the planets that have people that need the help, generally because they're being screwed over by an elitist type class who have set themselves up as the experts, unfortunately, they prevent the common people from knowing what ET is offering us and different options on how to do things. So the group that I'm involved with, what they decided, and this is thousands of years ago, they decided that they would work on an energy and a frequency basis, where when certain people on any planet are suffering, need help, reach out, what happens is they're able to communicate on a spiritual level. And then the person like myself, who is contacted, depending on what we can handle, our level of health, spirituality, how much frequency we can hold, and how much of understanding we can actually wrap our heads around, that is what determines how much training, information, etc. that we get. So what I really want to tell people is the fact that I've had angelic and ET and other types of contact, that in itself, although it might make for a good story, doesn't really have a lot of value. The value comes from the things I've learned, the things I've witnessed, things I've perceived. And so I see it as my job to bring that information down to planet Earth at this time and put it into terms that people can understand, so that everyone can benefit from the wisdom and the knowledge. It's not all about, oh, I'm so great, I had this ET experience and I can tell this wonderful story. Now, it is a wonderful story. I'm actually working on a book right now, which when it's ready, I'll let you know, and you can hopefully buy it and read it and see what you think. It's quite different than a lot of the other stories that are out there. But the really important thing is the information. Me understanding how they do things on different worlds is what I'm bringing to the table. And so Dave and I have created this show that's unique to us. And it's not just a cute little saying, aliens and astrology. We're getting amazing understanding and technology. Astrology is a technology. The information that I have gotten from ET is technological in nature. It involves our physical bodies, our emotional bodies, our light bodies, every aspect, our spiritual bodies, and it's all very, very spiritual, but not in any way religious. And so, as most of you know, I'm a talk show host on another show called The Quantum Guide Show. I really recommend you check it out. But I'm basically the host. So the shows are about my guests, not so much about me. So this platform is a great opportunity for Dave and I to discuss all kinds of issues that are affecting humanity. And we're able to bring in what we know. Dave is also, I'll let him tell his own story, but he's also coming from a spiritual perspective through a higher understanding of astrology. And I'm coming from a perspective where I am being taught, even to this day, by my extraterrestrial friends, family. I consider them my family, and also from other spiritual sources. So that's basically what I'm bringing to the table. And as far as my journey goes, I had, this intense 3-month period where I spent time off world. But to me, having that experience was more like 3.5 years. So in the upcoming shows, I will talk more about my experiences and the big ship and how it works and how everybody gets along and all kinds of cultural things that help you to really get an understanding of what some of the off-world beings are doing, how they are basically, they have already become the change they want to see in the world, and they're offering us training and understanding so that if we want to, we can apply that here on planet Earth. So that's about all. I do still have contact. I have contact with my guides, my ET, angels, all kinds of beings. And I have become very good at receiving that information via sort of translating or perceiving within my own realm, body sensations, thoughts, spontaneous knowings, all different ways. And so what I'm hoping I can also do is encourage you to reach out, which is actually reaching within, and find your own guides, your own spiritual support, your inner guru. And Dave and I are going to talk about a myriad of ways that you can do this, because you're in the driver's seat. And this life, however we're here on Earth, doesn't matter if we come back or not, is really up to us to engineer the kind of life that we want. And when we all start engineering, literally engineering our own life, the construct won't matter so much, won't be as disturbing, and we'll have many options that we maybe never really thought about before. So that's about it for my journey. I started making podcasts only about 3 years ago, and this is part of my spiritual journey as well. And at that point, I just want to turn it over to Dave and Dave Petrella, and let him talk to you a little bit about his journey. Dave.
Great, thanks, Karen. Yeah, that was fantastic. And I couldn't agree more. It's about each of us. We have our own personal journey, and really one of the big tenets that I feel very strongly about is that I'm not interfering with other people's journeys. All I'm doing is providing some options for people, especially if you've never heard of, or if you've never seen astrology done correctly, which is a scientific and mathematical way. It is a technology. You're right, Karen. It absolutely is. It's a system. It's a supercomputer. It's a cycle of time. It's all of these things. So, yeah, it's. I think you would agree, Karen. It's about getting people what's going to be right for them at the correct time. Leaving is it's not for me. I just want people to have success, and obviously respect other people, take care of the people around you and everything. But the way I've done it, I'm quite sure is not the way that most people are going to go about it. Maybe a few years or maybe more than a few years down the line, people might get around to some of the other things that I've been able to synthesize together. It's really, I think you'd agree, many years coming that the knowledge that you gather, you can't see the full. Not that we're ever going to see the entire picture, but in terms of the picture opening up to us, it often takes a lot of integrated information from multiple disciplines. Like the Renaissance people back in the day, they knew how to do most of the disciplines, and that's why they were so genius. Because it's not saying, "Oh, I'm a scientist or I'm a doctor or whatever, so I'm not going to do law," or "I'm a doctor, I'm not going to do astrology," whatever. No, you can actually embrace all of them, be open minded, and take what works for you, and try to be respectful of other people's opinions, and just leave the rest, that doesn't suit you. So in any case, my story, it really starts with biology. I've studied biology for a very, 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 very long time. I would say fifth grade, probably minimum. And the teachers, it's an elementary school education at that point. And by the way, I live in the United States. Of course, Karen lives in Canada. I'm from the northeast of the United States originally. And in elementary school, we had just basic courses on whatever, math, writing, science, literature, all these kinds of things. But when I saw the anatomy diagrams and drawings, again, very basic, that they were showing us and teaching us, I said, okay, so I was asking the teacher, I said, what structure is this one? What structure is this one? And of course, they didn't know, because all they knew was what was written in the text and what was already pre-labeled for them to teach the kids. And so I went out and I got a very informative, detailed book. Probably not really a kid's book. It was at least a high school level book, if not more. Back in the day, too, I found the information to be, in some ways, a lot more integrative and informative. And so this was quite a long time ago. This was the 1990s, and things, in terms of how things are being presented now, it's quite different. I still prefer, of course, older texts. And when I study something, I go for the oldest extant text to pull my resources from, because generally, oftentimes, it's going to be the least biased, the least affected by modern culture. I'm the kind of person that wants the information very clear. I don't want any beating around the bush. Just give me the information and leave it open, and don't try to manipulate or force anything. I'll take what I need and what I can use, and leave behind the rest. Which is, I really encourage that for everyone. Don't feel like you have to embrace everything, or if someone comes to you with a topic you might not like, if you find them credible and you respect them, just hear them out. You have none of us do, including myself, have no idea what we might learn from that. And I'm consistently, actually, on a daily basis, amazed at the information that I get if I don't have come in with preconceptions, and I leave it open to, okay, what is going to be shown to me today? What information am I going to gather? I will go into uncomfortable situations just so I can learn. I'm not afraid to do that. I understand, not everyone's into that, but and I always come out with something that helps to. It's really the synthesis that I'm most interested in, getting all these stories together. And of course, the title of the show, Aliens and Astrology. I want to know. One of my big topics, actually, with astrology, is who created the system, who created the astrology system, because it is a created system, and it didn't have to be the way it is, but it was created that way on purpose. And it's very, very, very integrated. It's a really beautiful system, but I don't actually necessarily fully agree with all the measures that have been taken, and the cycles of time and things of that nature. And we'll talk about more of that in later episodes, I'm sure. So in any case, back to the biology. It wasn't enough for me just to have the basic anatomy information, so I went to very detailed texts, and I was probably 9 or 10 years old, obviously very young, and I started to read it myself and study the diagrams. And then I had a very consistent interest in biology all the way through, I mean, up to the present day, actually. But in high school, I took AP biology. I got college credit for that. I did some other college credit courses when I was, I want to say, a sophomore in high school. I think I might have been a freshman too, maybe freshman and sophomore. I actually took college level courses at the University of Connecticut, and I did a lot of field research. And working with actual college students at the time and professors and everything, and we wrote up everything at the end, and the proper scientific method. We had the hypothesis and the data and the conclusion and everything. And of course, I was out there taking measurements and logging things and charts, and it's the real science. I was doing it from a very, very young age, and it was college level work. It's not like high school level work. So I was, always pushing the limits of what I could kind of handle at the time. So then, let's see, college, I continued with biology in college, and I actually kind of switched over, in addition to biology, to the language of Spanish. I used to be quite proficient at it. I don't use it a lot, so it takes me a little bit to get warmed up, if I'm in a conversation. I can still read it very well, though, which is interesting. I think it's probably a different part of the brain. But if I pick up a Spanish novel, I have no problem understanding most of what's in the text. So it's a great asset to have that too. Especially one of my missions really is to get the world together. I'm trying to bring people together. So all the time, people are like, Dave, come join our religion, or come join. It's like, guys, I'm interested in staying neutral. Okay, because what I believe in, first of all, is the purity of the heart and kindness and generosity. And to me, that actually speaks the most. It's not about what I say I believe or it's like, no, go volunteer to food drive, go pick up elderly people to help them go grocery shopping, do things, for free out of the generosity of your heart. That to me is more of God than you're going to see in religion. It's actually the person to person. I want to see what people, in terms of myself, I include myself first on the list, that I expect myself to be giving to people, to be in terms of my business, to be charging fair rates to people. I'm not, if I'm saying something, I'm willing to do it, or I have done it. I'm not saying things that are not from experience, and quite a lot of experience at that. And so, we just have to, people need to do what's right for them. And that's actually kind of one of the biggest universal laws for me, is that it's going to be different for everyone. Up to the point, what I believe, up to the point where someone is going to harm themselves or harm another person, I essentially stand back and I let people do what they're going to do, because it is a learning process. There is a point, I think, that it is appropriate to intervene, and that's obviously according to local law and laws of country and stuff like that. And also, just to, we need to take care of our neighbors and our family, and things of that nature too, which is, it's absolutely vital for any culture. Okay, so biology, I've never put it down. And then let's see, I want to say probably in 2011, no, probably 2012. I said, okay, so I have a very strong basis in the Western teachings of biology. Now, what I need to do really is I need to get the Eastern biology, which had never, ever been presented to me, even one time, even as a small subunit. Not one day did I have that in any class, all the way through college, believe it or not. It was never introduced as, here's another option that you might find interesting, you might find legitimate, go check it out, and that's the thing, is that I want to get different things in front of people so that you can see what's available to you, and then you can pick what's going to work for you. It's not about me. I think, you probably agree, Karen, it's not about me or you in terms of what's going to work for someone. I want that person to have success. So whatever they need to do that, hopefully that you're going to be finding things in the shows that me and Karen are doing. And we'll always be resources for people. So don't hesitate to reach out if you want clarification, or something that we offer can help you for sure. So I started to study the chakra system, and this is one of those things that just kind of came up in reading. I mean, I read huge amounts every day. I watch videos every day to learn. I'm also, of course, right now I'm on the road doing on the ground research, which is again absolutely vital to investigating things. It's not just things I read in a book or conversations I have. I'm actually at the sites. I'm taking measurements. I bought an EMF detector about a month and a half ago, so I've added that to the assets that I have. And it's very helpful because if I go into a situation and we're all biosensors. And so we're feeling the environment around us, including the spirits, if there are any present. So if I'm feeling something and then I look down at the EMF detector, and EMF is electromagnetic frequency, essentially light, different wavelengths of light is what it is. And it's matching what I'm feeling myself, then that's really good data. It's extremely good data. So someone doesn't have to take my full word for it. Now they can say, okay, well, this is what Dave said, and look what the reading is showing. It's not just
Mhm.
and more of that, the more the better. I want my perspective. I want your perspective, Karen. I want the scientific equipment's perspective. I want scholars from 200 years ago's perspective. I want people from ancient India's perspective, which is thousands of years ago, as much as we can possibly put out in front. And I always encourage people to share their viewpoint. I'm never going to say, no, I'm not going to listen to you. I will always listen as long as people are being respectful of themselves, other people, and also what I put out there too. That's it, really the only thing I ask from people. Just be a decent person, be respectful of other people's opinions. You don't have to believe it, but hear them out, especially if you find them credible. Okay, and so I started studying the chakra system. That was while I was in Alaska, actually doing tourism. I spent about 4 seasons up there doing tourism, and I just sat in the library one day and I had no idea what I was about to find. And then it started to kind of enhance my general knowledge of biology in ways that I didn't even know existed because no one ever presented that to me, which is one of the
Mhm.
primary issues, is that we have to see it, we have to hear it. And you know what? You might say, okay, it's not for me right now. You know what? 10 years down the line, when someone says something, you say, you know what? Someone told me that 10 years ago, and now suddenly you have an interest in picking it up. So you don't know when you're going to be able to use the information. I think you'd agree, Karen. But for me, it always comes back around. If I haven't finished on a topic, then I will have more access to that topic sometimes years down the road, sometimes 10 years down the road. I mean, one of the things, a good example for that is, I've studied the religions extensively. I've also read the Bible 3 times front to back, starting with the Old Testament. But in addition to that, the Hindu texts, which are primarily for me were the Upanishads, which is a very, very beautiful, exquisite work. I would highly recommend that for actually maybe as a first book, even, Karen, for anyone that wants to get into spirituality, because it doesn't talk about any of the gods. It doesn't like name specific people and things. It talks about the purity of your heart. It talks about how you're one with the universe, but you're also your own entity, and how they overlap each other and everything. It's a really, really wonderful work. And then, of course, the Bhagavad Gita, which is the text of Arjuna and Krishna. It's the hero's journey, essentially, the journey to ascension. That's a fantastic text as well. And then, continuing with some of the Chinese texts, the Buddhist texts, the Egyptian Book of the Dead. I've worked with Native Americans. Um, I'm probably missing something, but Zoroastrianism, I spent some time with that one. As much as I can possibly have in front of me, I've consistently asked the question: how do you explain spirituality? How do you define God? How do you define morality? That's a really big one for me, because if someone says I'm spiritual, well, I want to see what that actually means to you, because I talk to most people would say that someone's spiritual. You call yourself spiritual. But what is important to me is, what are the tenets that you stick to and that you adhere to and that you believe in. And if you say you're spiritual and you're out, hurting other people, that doesn't work for me. You have to actually, your action has to match what you're actually saying. And it
Mhm.
really starts in the heart, the kindness and the purity and the generosity, and then that will come out in all of the other avenues of your life naturally. You don't even have to plan it or force it or anything. So anyway, what I was getting at is that the Mormon text has come back. First time I was introduced to that was 2012, and it just came back last year. And when it comes back like that, I already had the text for reference, and I started talking to some of the missionaries again. And again, it's about getting other people's perspectives. It's about revisiting the text, because I missed a huge amount of information. Because between that time and now was 10 years of me. That's actually the time I learned astrology. I didn't have any of that when I first read any of the, really most of the text. I had no astrological bearing. and it's absolutely vital if you're gonna synthesize at full levels. You know, you can read something, you get one level of meaning, but if you want the whole level, you're going to at some point need to have that, because that's how the time clock for the earth has been created and structured. We're born into the signs that we're born into. That's not a coincidence. If people don't believe it, you can take your family, take your friends, make a really big list, put everyone in their proper sign, and then I encourage people, just go read the description of that sign and you're going to be astounded. And that's not even, has nothing to do with me. That's actually just has to do with what the science actually is talking about. And that's a very baseline astrology. It's the very, very basics. In fact, there's no limit to how far you can go with it. All right, so the chakra system, I picked up the chakra system in 2012. And it started to put together some things that I had learned along the way about fasting, about the different states of consciousness that you have, depending on where your energy is centered along your spine. And I think we did a show on that previously, Karen, one of our shows we've done on a different platform, talking about the dimensions and everything. Oh, that was your show, actually, Quantum Guide show. So putting that together, you know, it turns out the chakras also have a planet that is associated with each of the chakras. Of course, there's a color that's associated with each of them. There's a metal that's associated with each of them. There's a day of the week that's associated with each of them. There's a note that's associated with each of them. And so this is the real syncretism. And I do want to thank my friend Santos Bonacci for presenting a lot of this material to me back in the beginning, which would have been 2015 actually. Because it is syncretism. Syncretism means putting everything together in its proper place, to the extent that everything works together and it synthesizes with itself and with the other disciplines, because it's all going to fit. You just have to figure out where it fits. And that's consistently what I'm aiming to do with what I teach and in my research. So I picked up the chakra system, and then I picked up along the same time the Indian texts, which I'd already referred to. And then I was a few years later, I actually was looking for information about the spinal cord fluid. This was in 2015, because it's said to be a very mystical substance that is essentially a conduit for the soul or the spirit in the body, that the consciousness exists in that fluid, and it permeates all the cells of the body. And that comes, it really starts in the brain, and then it is differentiated into the CSF. Well, the cerebrospinal fluid goes down the spinal cord, and then from the spinal cord, it gets differentiated into the rest of the fluid systems. But the main channel is always the spine, and specifically the spinal cord. There's two nerves that, according to Hindu tradition, there's two nerves that wind down the spine, and one is an electric nerve, one is a magnetic nerve, and the spinal cord is said to be the neutral channel. And so what happens is, as they wind down, they meet in 7 different places, and the 7 places they meet creates a vortex, because when you're putting a negative current and a positive current together plus a neutral current, you have, that's the trinity. First of all, that's the 3. That's the core meaning of the 3, is you have the positive, the negative, and the neutral, or the masculine, the feminine, and the neutral. And that creates a vortex of energy, and which is a spinning, the chakra actually means wheel. And so it's a spinning vortex or a wheel of energy. It comes out both sides of the spine at that specific point, 1 through 7, because there's 7 primary chakras. And then I do teach there's 3 additional ones above the head that you can't see. So anyway, all of that started to come into play. And then as I searched for that video about the spinal cord fluid, which by itself was probably the most astonishing video I've ever seen in my life, and I don't think it will ever be topped. If people want to check that out, go over to YouTube, type in Your Body is the Holy Land, Santos Bonacci. It's in 2 parts. And the other one that's fantastic, equally as good, some slightly different information, is The Secret of Secrets Hiding in the Bible, Part 1 and Part 2. That's also Santos Bonacci. So, you know, what he presented is something I needed to see when I was in high school still. And the fact of the matter is we're still not at that point where kids can see this. So you don't even have, especially as you're developing, you have to give the kids some options to choose what makes the most sense for them. Don't give them like half the story and then try to blindside them. And so you're going to force them to believe whatever you're saying, which might not even be true, to be quite honest. give them all the options you can. And that's something that I'd like to eventually in the future be able to find a way to integrate that for people to give me a chance to speak at events or to speak at schools, just to get it in front of the kids. This is how the Chinese talk about it. This is how the Hindus talk about it. This is how the Buddhists talk about it. This is how we teach it in America. And now you can decide what you want to do with it. You know, that's the way you actually do proper science too. I am not biased when I go into a situation. I have, even on the research, I thought, and we'll talk about this in the future too, Karen, but I went to Pine Bush, New York last week, which is essentially the UFO capital of the Northeast of the United States. And there was a string of events. I want to say it was in the 80s, might have even been late 70s into maybe the mid 80s. I think by 1996, it kind of quieted down a lot. But anyway, they have a paranormal museum there, a UFO paranormal museum. I thought for sure that the energy when I drove into the town would be not great. And I was absolutely amazed. It was actually completely the opposite. I could not believe it. I was ready to deal with some difficult energy. I didn't have to. Actually, the energy was great. It was supporting me. The people in the town were really conversational and nice to talk with. I was amazed. So that's one of those examples where I went in and I said, no, for sure, if you're having weird UFO stuff going on, it's going to be probably a not great energy in the local environment, which would be generally the local land, but also the energy grid that you can't see. You call it the ether if you want to. And it was exactly the opposite. So you know what I said? Okay. I said, all right, I was not correct about that. That's no problem. Now I know. And now when I talk about Pine Bush or even, the Hudson Valley, I can talk about it differently now because I've been there, because I did the research on site I had an EMF detector. I had actually another person with me as well to get their input on it, as much as possible, gather as much information as possible. So that was an example of that. And anyway, so I found the cerebrospinal cord fluid video, and then I said, you know what? I said Santos did such a good job, and that's a serious understatement. It was the best video I've ever seen in my life. I was, I think, 25 when I saw it the first time, which is an absolute shame. I should have been 16 or 17. That's what I needed to see at that age. And Karen, it would have saved me 10 to 15 years of a very difficult transition period. If I had seen that before I was taught things that I actually don't even believe are true now, most of what I learned specifically in high school, most of that I completely have had to unlearn and then relearn things the proper way. So he did such a good job that I actually clicked on the videos that are recommended for you on the side of the YouTube page, and I saw he had some astrology videos, and I said, you know what? That's something that I actually don't really understand. And the reason I watched it is because he did such a good job on the videos about biology and spirituality. And that's what I'm talking about too when I say, is the person credible? And if they are, and if they've demonstrated something very valuable to you in the past, give them more opportunities to help and to inform you. Watch all of their stuff, watch all of their material. The people that I like the most, I've watched almost every video they put out because I can trust them. They're consistently putting out good information, and that's helpful to me. So I just gave him a chance, and after I started to see the uncanny similarities between what my sign is, I'm a Pisces, and the description of Pisces, I was like, no, that's exactly how I am. I can't look the other way on that. If I'm going to be a good scientist, I have to look at that seriously. Then what I did is I took the people I know, my family and friends and extended family, and I started to put people, like I said, into their proper signs. And then I was thinking about all of them together. And then I read the description of that sign and I said, no, this is correct. This is correct. I have to go with this because it's correct information. In fact, if you're looking at it correctly, it's never going to let you down. It has never let me down one time. When I do charts, I could do it blindfolded now because I trust it implicitly. It's demonstrated itself to me. I would say probably 1,000 times now. I mean, I've done probably 1,000 charts since 2015, and I don't have to think twice about it. And there's always a pivot point too if someone's unsure of something. The most popular one is, oh, I read my sign, that doesn't sound like me. And what I say, the first thing immediately is I say, okay, well, read the sign that's opposite to you then. And then tell me if that sounds like you. And I'm telling you, 99% of the time they say, oh yeah, actually that's the one. That's describes me. And that's the principle of the axis in astrology, which means each sign has its complementary sign on the other side of the zodiac. We're not just one sign, it's an axis. So you can flip back and forth depending on polarity and depending on how you're holding your energy that day. If you're in a lot of stress, it's probably going to, and you can't handle the stress well, it's going to probably flip to your opposite sign. You actually want to read the opposite description. And generally, it's not somewhere you want to be either. It's something that it's going to feel uncomfortable for you, and it's going to feel difficult. It probably will bring a fair amount of anxiety. You're feeling off balance because the polarity is wrong. You need to get back on the positive side of the pole. So in any case, I picked up astrology in 2015. I started doing birth charts, and it got, of course, to a whole different, much higher level when I was more than just, oh, what is your sign? When someone says, what is your sign? They're saying, what is your sun sign? You have the sun sign, the moon sign, plus the ascendant sign, and together they make up you. That's really the whole picture, the whole basic picture. I mean, it goes a lot further than that. And so once I started doing birth charts, it really developed, and I actually could not believe that, again, it's the same thing, that this was not taught to me correctly, that I didn't see it when I was, actually I did see it when I was 16, but guess what? The only information that I had was from the newspaper horoscopes, which are often just done as a fun thing. Well, oh, take this lightly, you know, it may be real, it may not be. Okay, well, yeah, that's true for the newspaper. It could be anything anyone wants it to be. Sometimes it's for entertainment, actually. But the real astrology, no, it's always, I mean, it's always 100% accurate if you have the accurate information. I try to get, 99, I say 99%, just I leave that 1% chance for error. But I always know where to look. If there's a question or if something's unclear, I'm going to know where to refer to in the chart. Of course, the what's called the daily transits, which means what's happening at any given day, is also important. It generally does not hold as much weight as your birth chart, because your birth chart is stamped in your body and it's stamped in your mental structure, and you carry that with you everywhere you go, no matter where you are on the planet, no matter if you're awake or sleeping. That's your stamp and that's your signature. So that's the first one you want to look at, and that's if you have to choose one, that's the only one you want to look at, but there's no reason to choose one. We can embrace all of the different tools that can help us, which include the daily transits. It includes progress charts. There's everything. There's relationship matching. There's career matching. That you can pick days where will be more likely for you to have success if you're trying to schedule something, or schedule a wedding, or schedule a conference, or whatever, a career move. There's a way to do it that is much more likely you're going to have success, specifically based on your birth chart. But then you can also look at the daily chart, which is called the daily transit. So anyway, 2015, I picked up astrology, and since then it's been a lot of it has kind of gone into the quantum side, which is something that me and Karen have very much in common. And it's one of the first things we really bonded on. It's that when you open up the quantum possibilities, really anything becomes possible. There are limits in terms of the physical world, but there are also ways to deal with those limits and to triumph over those limits. And those are the things that I teach with understanding your astrology, understanding the body, understanding how the fluids flow in the body, which is really, it's called Ayurvedic medicine. The general principles of Ayurveda: you need to get the fluids refined. They need to be free flowing. You need to break the blockages safely, and then you will start to have a serious rejuvenation happening, up to the point actually of ascension, which is a whole another topic in itself. And so it's been a lot about the quantum field. I do a lot with dimensions now. I did pick up the ET topic around 2016, probably. I started watching Ancient Aliens. I've seen every single episode of that show. I actually went to William Henry's conference, who's one of the stars of the show, in Nashville in April. And I got to sit down with him for a couple hours, and we talked about actually mostly about Ayurveda, which is my perspective on the conference was called the Oil of Ascension. Christos 2.0, the Oil of Ascension. Christos refers to the oil, the Christ oil. That's the central point of ascension teachings in biology. And so we talked about how actually, the Ayurvedic texts, this is something else that I needed to see when I was 16. The Ayurvedic texts out of ancient India talk about how to clean your body, how to improve your energy, your frequency, how to improve your health and to heal. and it centers around oil, amazingly. And so all of these traditions, they come together if but for instance, the Egyptians were talking about oil too, but primarily, as far as I know, they were using oil to embalm the body on the outside of the body. They were also using salts, but they were using them on the outside of the body after the person had died. And in ancient India, you can certainly use it on the outside of the body. It's really good for healing. The oils and the salts, just specifically the oils, really, but well, the salts too. I mean, they draw out the impurities and they're very conductive. And what happens is you have the teaching of the oil on the inside of the body, and that's what I'm trying to get people to focus on, because like you said, during your introduction, Karen, everything we need is within us. It's all within us, and actually to such an extent that you wouldn't believe what starts to happen to your perception and to your dimension around you. I actually referred to all of us having a personal dimension in addition to a collective dimension, and we can of course talk more about that in the future. But just watch what happens. You get into a heavy fast. Make sure you're being safe. There's ways to do it. I can certainly help with that. There's lots of books out there that can help too. But if you want the first-hand perspective, please reach out to me for that. What happens is your perception starts to shift so dramatically if you get your fluids very clean that the colors of things change, the sounds you hear change, the smells you smell. There's things that are in the air that you can't even smell because you've lost that receptivity because your energy is too low. So if you improve that, now you could walk in the same business or the same restaurant and you couldn't smell anything before. Now you can smell everything around you. That's to the extent I'm talking about. And then also when you talk about the dimensions, it's very interesting because things are not really what they seem. It's we're taught that there's like one reality and this is it. No, that's not how it is. And the ancient Indians, they knew that thousands of years ago, at minimum. And I would say actually most of the ancient traditions knew that. And so we need to get back to giving that option to people. Again, it's an option I want to put in front of people. I'm not saying you have to do it, but I'm saying if you're open to it, you'll be amazed at what you actually can discover from being open. So all that stuff, it's all there for us to use. Excuse me. And I continue to do a lot of research. Of course, I am based in the United States, so I continue to do a lot of research based in this country. I've been doing a lot with the mound builder civilization, which is all throughout the Midwest, and actually goes into Ontario a little bit as well, that I know of, and over to the east, all the way to say West Virginia, and there are some in Florida as well. So it was a huge civilization. I am following the LDS story, the Latter Day Saint story, which is another big story that happened in the United States. It's Joseph Smith was born in Vermont, and he migrated through over to New York, to Palmyra area, and that's where he found the tablets on the hill that had a record of the ancient Jewish people in the Americas. And he had visitations by angels, and you could say ETs. I would feel comfortable saying ET. I mean, anything that's extraterrestrial that's not based on the land is technically an ET. And then of course the church was founded, and there was I really encourage people to read that story and just be open-minded. I'm not saying you have to believe it, but just please, it's one of the most phenomenal stories I've ever read in my life, fiction or nonfiction. I'm absolutely glued to the story ever since I first read it the first time. So if people wanted to look into that, pick up a Book of Mormon and just be open-minded. Don't go in with preconceptions. Just see how you feel as you read it, and try to maybe take some notes and see things that interest you to follow up on in the future. There's plenty there. So I think that kind of covers it, Karen. I mean, you got the biology, you have the astrology, the spiritual topics, the spiritual guidance topics. You have the Eastern medicine topics, the ET topics, the ancient history topics. Most of the ancient history, well, the things I can do on the ground are, of course, the United States, because that's where I'm based now. And then I'm sure there's more, but the last thing that I didn't mention is of course Oak Island, which I was involved with the show The Curse of Oak Island in 2017 and 2018. And unfortunately, they didn't air my segment, but it was a big success. People really enjoyed the information, and I continue to follow that story very closely because it does involve, I believe, extraterrestrial intelligence. and lots of other things too. There's ghosts there. There's potentially the Knights Templar that were there, which is a fantastic story in itself. Fairies, giants, little people. It's somehow it seems like everything happened in on that island. And what's interesting is that when the land masses were connected as part of Pangaea, which was the supercontinent way back in the day, the Nova Scotia, Canada area was essentially at this very center of that landmass, and that it really includes New England, where I'm from too. So there's something to be said for why the energy is so unbelievably strong, especially Massachusetts. If people haven't spent any time in Massachusetts, I've never felt such intense raw energy as I do in Massachusetts. And I would just issue a word of caution: just be careful where you go in terms of the energy you can handle. You want to go in with spiritual protection. Be open-minded to learn, but it's not a joke. Please be careful if you go out there doing research in Massachusetts specifically. Very, very, very strong energy. Well before the settlers came over too. This is not from like the 1620s. This is from, actually, I think it's from before the Native Americans. It's something that happened there that actually no one even remembers. That's how old it is. So yeah, it's all those disciplines together, and like I said before, the more we can put together, the more we can figure out, and it's a group effort, right, Karen? You know, we want to. I don't want to do this by myself. I want assistance. I want other people's perspective, and I want to get people to find the best version of themselves that they can, living the life that they've envisioned for themselves. Obviously, treating other people with respect and dignity along the way. But that's my goal for other people and for the world, is to get everyone to the best version of themselves. It's not a competition between other people. If it's a competition, it's really between yourself, your old versions and your improved versions. And you know, it's very important to me that I'm doing better every day. And if I'm not, then you know, I take an assessment and I say, all right, it's time to step it up. I've got to do a little bit better. And you know, even for me, you had mentioned, of course, your wonderful show, Quantum Guide Show. I've been on a few times, and you have absolutely fantastic guests. You know, even some big names and stuff, which is really fantastic. It's so cool to see people interacting and to get their perspective too. I started doing podcasts actually in September of 2021, so it's still pretty new for me. You know, I'm coming up on a year soon, but it's great, and I like to get conversations going. As many people as are interested in having a conversation. I don't go in with expectations. We just see what happens, and if it's successful, then you know, we continue talking and we continue sharing information. And I just want to get the world. It's not even North America. I want to get the world to a better place, better access to good information that's going to be helpful in a way that's easy to understand. That's very important for me. And I think you would probably agree with this, Karen, that, you know, when I talk astrology and I do birth charts, it's as simple as I can possibly make it, and to make it a way that's going to be easiest for people to integrate. I'm not trying to, I don't use big words. I use things people can understand wherever your starting point is. Because I'm not trying to be better than anyone. I'm not trying to like get attention or to have notoriety. It has nothing to do with that. It has to do with getting good information out to people, being fair and honest, treating people well. And then, you know what, if we continue to do that, we're going to set up a really, really bright future for everyone. There's going to be so much wealth, all kinds of wealth, you know, in the heart, material wealth, if people are interested in that. But you know where that comes from? And the best way to do that, for me, the only way to do that is treating each other with respect and dignity, being decent, being open-minded, and taking care of your neighbor. So that's really where I'm at with that. And that's about it, Karen. You know, I guess we can open it up for a little discussion here.
Yeah, that's great. That's great, Dave. Let's just take a quick commercial break. Stay with us, folks. There's more coming, and I think you'll find it very, very interesting, and we'll be right back. Don't skip over this brief commercial break. Dave and I have some important information for you. You may have noticed that participation in our community does not depend on memberships or donations, and we do not hide our episodes behind a paywall. We want everyone to have the opportunity to learn and share our important content with others. Dave and I both offer services which may make your journey more fulfilling and I offer some products as well. Our sales and services are what provide us with the means to continue our work, as there are many expenses associated with our mission. Check out our offerings to find that which resonates with you to help create a win-win situation. What I mean by that is financial support to help cover our expenses, but also some great products and services to give you that edge that you've been looking for. Check out my online shop, www.karenholtonhealthcoach.com, to find Zendome's orgone generators, comfort crystals, and an array of vital services, all designed to help you to become the change that you wish to see in the world. Now, more than ever, people are awakening to a world we never imagined possible. In response, Dave and I are offering tools, methods, and podcast content to assist you with your awakening process. You are not alone, and there is still much we can do to support our health, emotions, and our spirituality. We both combine ancient wisdoms with cutting-edge technology to help bring comfort to your body, happiness to your mind, and joy to your spirit. To assist you with your life journey, check out my website and find many valuable resources. There's the 9 Steps to Quantum Health Transformation. This is a free, comprehensive online course. Learn about detoxification and nutrition, grounding and spiritual practices, and an advanced version of the Law of Attraction, giving you more of what you really want out of life. I also have my Zendome's Orgonite, which is my unique brand of orgone generators. They're ethically sourced and handmade by a friend of mine, and they're double charged for maximum effect. I also carry comfort crystals, which is a limited collection of energetically infused semi-precious stones. I have an array of vital services, so you can get the one-on-one support that you've been looking for. Also coaching, guidance, and I do assessments and also workshops. And then again, there are the many free resources available on my website. Wisdom to assist with energetic ascension into physical, mental, and spiritual paradise. Also, check out Dave's services. Dave can teach you about astrology and spiritual concepts, principles of Eastern medicine, birth charts, relationship matching, spiritual guidance, fasting, and his unique approach to health. You can find Dave's services on his Facebook page, Instagram at DavePetrella12, and his YouTube channel. The links can be found in the description box below. Let us share our quantum work with you. It's your turn to heal, evolve, and thrive. Believe in your ability to succeed. Now, let's get back to the show. Thank you for staying with us. So Dave and I are going to talk a little bit about how our different perspectives sort of complement each other and where we're coming from, just to give you a better idea. And then, as Dave mentioned earlier, please feel free in the comments, leave us some comments. What do you think of what we're saying? Do you have a different perspective? Do you have a similar perspective? And what would you like to see more of in this show? But one thing that was very interesting for me is Dave and I, we have these synchronicities that we can't even explain. It's not like I call him up and go, hey, Dave, what about this or that before the show? It just organically comes out. So from my perspective, I use the chakra system a lot too. And it is such an amazingly easy to understand system, but it also represents so much. So we're moving away from, and please feel free to disagree or agree, Dave, but we're moving away from an intellectual or a scholarly way of looking things, more moving into an energetic way of looking at things, which includes quantum mechanics. And so the chakra system is this amazing system that can help us with our health, with our psychology, with our spirituality. And what I think is probably the most important is so that our body can hold the frequency, because we are the temple. And that frequency then allows us to push that energy up, and then above our heads, of course, we can ground also, to the earth. But through that's how we kind of bring heaven down to earth, is by getting to the point where we can actually contact higher dimensional realities. And yes, if you haven't seen the show on dimensions, we're going to repeat it, I think, on this program. And I'm going to add my component, and Dave can add his again. And you can get a really kind of comprehensive perspective on what we mean when we're talking about perspectives. But Dave, did you have anything else you wanted to say about the chakra system? Because we both draw on it quite heavily in the way we see reality. And it's all energy based. The actual physical 3D hard construct is actually an illusion more than anything else. And the quickest route to health and happiness and even financial prosperity is through the energetic system. Dave, what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, I agree, Karen. The chakra system really is, well, you can refer to it as the cosmic axis of the body. And so when I teach about dimensions, if people have seen some of the previous episodes, the dimensions are stacked essentially on along the central cosmic axis. And this is the ancient model. It's really the ancient model in almost every tradition, believe it or not. If you go to the Norse tradition or the Hindu tradition, the Kabbalistic tradition, the biblical I mean, there's even references to, a flat plane. Actually, the Quran talks about the carpet being rolled out. A carpet does not lay, like draped over something. Okay, I'm just saying, carpet is flat. You put it on the flat ground, and this is what is being said in the Quran. That's just one example. So anyway, the reason I bring that up is because the ancient model of dimensions is based on, well, when you talk about the planets, it really is based on the flat Earth plane, flat Earth disk being at the center of the cosmic axis. The Norse called it Midgard. They called it Earth Midgard, which means the middle garden. And so that actually shows you it's in the middle of the axis. And then you have the heavens above and the hells below. And then another way to refer to it is purgatory. In my opinion, this is purgatory. You see about 50% great, 50% not great. It's a pretty even representation because we're in the mid dimension. It's not a very high level dimension, but believe me, there are plenty worse. So I'm thankful at least that I'm not in one of the hellish realms. The lower realms, they don't even have color in them. The shades of black and white and grays and things. Imagine being born into this dimension, and if you've come from a lower dimension, you wouldn't believe the colors that you can see. It's like you didn't even know it existed, being in one of the lower dimensions on the axis. So anyway, the planets are set along the cosmic axis, and they have what are called their sphere. They roll over their own sphere. I teach 10 spheres above, 10 spheres below, plus the flat disk in the middle, which makes 21 total. Which actually, Karen, and another way to segment it is saying it's 3 sets of 7. You can do that. That's okay. That's consistent. So if you want to talk about, the mid-level dimensions being part of the seven chakras, there's a 7 chakra, and we actually covered this in one of our previous presentations. Each of the chakras is actually broken up into smaller segments. Everything is fractal. That's really how at least this solar system works. I believe it's how the universe works, actually, the whole universe. So you'll see representations, smaller representations within things. You'll see larger representations within things, and they all are consistent with each other. So in any case, that's how the cosmic axis is built, and those are the dimensions. That's the larger system. And then the system of the cosmic axis in the human body is the chakra system. And each of the chakras correlates with one of the 7 chakras. one of the 7 planets, and I already mentioned these a little bit before. It's a direct correlation. Colors, the notes, everything. And so they all fit together. It's not even a stretch to fit them together. It actually just fits extremely well. And those are the things that I like to teach, because I'm not pushing. I'm not like pushing the limits about what I'm saying. It actually just fits into place really well. And
It
so in the
does.
body, exactly. So in the body, and like as you're talking about, you're given a conduit to the dimensions in your own body, which is why it's absolutely vital that you work on your energy to become a conduit of higher frequency, so that you can have better access to some of the higher dimensions, specifically the higher. I don't focus on lower dimensions. Some people do work in lower dimensions that help, and that's wonderful. I occasionally do things of that nature, but they're all available to us along our spine. And the idea is that you have to get them to open fully. You really ideally want to have all of them open fully. And actually, if you had all of them open fully, you would cease to be physical. And that's actually the true teaching of ascension, is to convert the physical body, from a dense form to a light form, or a light body, or an astral body, or a celestial body. There's lots of names for it. And then once you're not made of carbon, not carbon based, now it's not such a big deal to, there's no aging, you can travel through time, you can change your form, you can do really anything, the universe is open to you. But to get to that point, I would say that there is a qualification period. And actually the chakras, and the planets they're called, their names is called the gatekeepers. They make sure that you're consistent with their teaching. So if you want to get to the 5th chakra, you've got Mars watching you and making sure that you're consistent with, if you want to enter that domain, you have to match the energy of that domain, which I agree 100% with what you said, Karen. You can't just, especially as you get older, you can't just like wish or will it. You actually have to fix the physiology. At a certain point, the mental power diminishes so much that you can't just like wish it to happen. You actually have to make it happen. You have to work with the physiology. You have to do some serious filtering of the fluids, and you got to get the oil back in, and convert the oil to a higher frequency as well. And the Hindus call it the Kundalini power. That's the energy in the spine, and it goes through. It's a conduit through all really 10 chakras above and below the base of the spine. And that's what we are given to work with. So it's not the truth we're looking for is not outside, it's inside of our own bodies. And if you want to have the experience of the highest dimensions, you can have that, right? Well, not immediately, but after some work in the proper science and the discipline, and actually the understanding of what to do, you can have access to those higher dimensions. And in the previous presentation, what I was talking about is that, let's just take it for granted, just for this illustration, that we're all currently present in the Earth dimension, which is the middle realm. I already mentioned Midgard, the middle garden, the name for Earth. And by the way, the name Earth, if you rearrange the letters of Earth, you get the word heart. And we all know exactly, by the way, it's the same letters. And the heart, we all know, is in the middle. So there's another reason that we know, that I believe. I mean, I don't believe, for me, I know that the Earth is in the middle. Because it's talking about the heart. So the Kundalini power, this is what I want to say. And I already mentioned that. So let's just say, take it for granted for this illustration, that we all live in the Earth dimension. And while we're in the Earth dimension, we can actually pull in energy from any of the other 20 dimensions. And that's actually one of the best ways to illustrate how you can be in a room with people and you're all seeing different things and perceiving different things. And it's like you're all living in a different world, because we generally are, because some people are pulling much lower energies, their physical body's here, but their mental body is not. Their mental body is maybe in the 4th dimension below the Earth, which would be one of the hells. So they're pulling in the energy from that dimension, bringing it to this realm, and then they're trying to basically convince everyone else that this realm, that's the energy in this realm, when it's not. This realm is right in the middle. So if you want to truly feel the energy of the Earth, don't channel anything, don't connect with anything psychically. Just literally, and this is the best way to do it, Karen. Literally, just go out into the woods, go for a walk. Don't do anything, any kind of meditative, anything. Just actually go and experience the flowers, breathe the fresh air. That's the Earth dimension. Anything else, well, most of the other things are coming from either higher dimensions or lower dimensions. And you pull them into the earth dimension in your own personal perception based on which chakra is most open and where most of the information is coming through. So we have a huge capacity to be pulling in information and energies from all of the 21 dimensions of this solar system. And then there's also outside of the solar system, which is a completely different topic. You can communicate with anything in the universe if they're open to it. And I agree with you, what you said before too, is that you have to match the energy of what you're trying to communicate with. So if the entities or if the beings or the spirits, whatever you want to call the living forms of the universe, if they deem, and it is up to them, by the way, if you are asking them for help, it's their right to either approve that or deny that. So basically, they're going to look at where your heart stands, would probably look at what you've done, and decide, is this person truly deserving of the information they're asking for? Specifically, the higher dimensional beings, they are the ones who actually make the final call. If it's the lower energy beings, we're kind of the ones that make the call, since we're the ones living on Earth. So the best way to go into it is with respect, and again, open-mindedness and humility. That really goes a very, very long way. Go in asking for the information, do it with a contrite spirit, and say, I'm confused or I'm lost. I'm looking for help. If there's anyone out there that can help me, please, I'm asking for assistance. And if you're truly in the heart space, that you will be given that information. You're right about that.
Yeah. I just wanted to add a couple other things about the chakras. I'm sorry, Dave, am I interrupting you?
No, that's it. That's it.
Okay, that's great stuff. I agree 100%. And as the show progresses, we'll give you more and more lessons and teachings so that you can find out more practical ways of actually participating in some of the things we're talking about. So from my perspective, looking again at the chakra system, what's amazing is each chakra is also kind of governs different emotional states. So, like the solar plexus governs anger, the root chakra has its emotional component, including passion and survival, I guess, and then the sacral is more passion and things like that. As we work our way up and clear these channels or these energy wheels or vortices, we're then able to progress higher and higher in our own spirituality. And the interesting thing about this is everything within our world has been kind of color or energy coded. So sound is energy, color is energy, crystals emit energy. So I'll give you an example. If I'm just using this as an example, it can be any emotion. Look up, in fact, we'll do a whole session, a whole show on this coming up in the near future. But say, for instance, you're just not getting the results you want out of life, and you realize that lately you've been really feeling angry and you don't really know where that's coming from, but you're feeling angry. So, that would correspond to the solar plexus. And please do go ahead and Google some of these terms and look at some of the charts, and you'll get a much better idea. But so what happens is you can spend a whole bunch of money and time going for psychotherapy and this and that, but there's another way of dealing with it, because when you boil it all down to the energy level, so you may want yellow crystals like citrine, which is in the quartz family. Very, very powerful crystal. And we may find it really attractive to us. And we go out and we buy some citrine. And then you realize it's because that part of your chakra system needs help, needs support. The same thing goes with yellow. You might decide, you know what, I really feel like some lemonade, not the crappy stuff you buy from the store. I'm talking about a real lemon. Cut it, squeeze it, add some water to it. It's delicious, it's refreshing, and it really helps us on an emotional level as well. So I'm just using that chakra and that color as an example. We can do it through foods, we can do it through sunshine, we can do it through so many different ways. And so these are some of the other things that we want to teach you. And again, once we have our chakras up and running, nice and clear, there's nothing we can't do. And but there is a price to pay. We do need to do some education, some learning. We need to learn about correspondences, because a correspondence for one person may not be ideal, as ideal it is for someone else. And there's just so many ways to what I call skin a cat. I know, horrible analogy, but there's so many ways of doing this. And to me, it's just wonderful. So I come from a different perspective than Dave, but we meet right in the middle. And I think that is the really awesome aspect. And Dave and I don't even have to agree on things, because that also helps to serve to build the discussion and bring more information out to you, the viewers. There's one other thing, we're running out of time, but there's one other thing I did want to touch on. Dave, you talked about it. I talked a little bit about it, and that is, living in the West, predominantly, I would say the religious environment is what we would call Christian. And sometimes people think I'm speaking unchristian, and I'm not. I'm not valuing any one spiritual system over another. I think there's beautiful things we can learn and find in common in all the different belief systems. But just for clarification, what I wanted to talk about is, in my own perspective and from my orientation, there's sort of two ways that I see Christianity being executed. One is to obey your church and your religion, absolutely, because they're promising that one day Jesus is going to come and save everybody. And although that's a very noble way of doing things, I personally don't fit in that paradigm. I fit in the paradigm where the teachings of Christ were to teach us, as is the teachings of other spiritual teachers of the past, is to teach us how to become Christ-like. And so for me, the second coming is becoming more like Christ, and more energy is on that Christ level of experience. And so that we actually will change the world and rescue ourselves. I'm not saying that Jesus was or wasn't there. That's beyond the scope of this discussion. But the point is what resonates for me is that, yes, absolute respect to the man they call Christ and the teachings of Christ, but I see a greater fulfillment of that within our actual bodies and our own energy systems, where we've then become more Christ-like. And with that, I want to turn it back over to you, Dave, because that's what you were talking about, where you talked about the fluids in the body. Do you want to address a little bit more about that? I just don't want people thinking I'm anti-Christian. I'm not. I'm just believing in a more broader and richer idea, where we take personal responsibility for becoming the change we want to see in the world. Anyway, what are your last thoughts on that, Dave?
Yeah, regardless of what the outer narrative might be, if that does include a second coming, I mean, most of the Abrahamic religions have a second coming that figures into what they believe. But there's in the East, it doesn't really work that way nearly as much. They talk more about the Yuga cycles and everything in its right time. And then the Buddhists are kind of like, don't get weighed down with anything. Try to be careful of attachments, and that's one way of kind of getting to the spot personally where you might want to be. But yeah, actually, that's the thing, Karen, is that regardless of what someone thinks might be happening, the conduit is within you. The power is within you to do it. You're the one at the end of the day. It's always going to be this way. That is deciding what you're associating with, what kinds of energies and frequencies, who you communicate with, what's acceptable to you in terms of morality and things of that nature. And, if the outside narrative, if there is a figure that comes back, okay, but it doesn't mean I have to put all my focus on that. My focus is still on being the best person that I can be. So while I'm doing that, if that just so happens to occur, then fine. Then I'll look at the event and I'll decide what I feel about it at the time. Because we all do have, we have the, be careful how I say this, we have a certain amount of free will. I mean, astrology does limit it, and we can talk more about that in the future. But
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, you really want to be able to exhibit as much, first of all, self-control as possible, because that's when you really lock in on what you believe and how you define things, the kinds of results that you get, the clarity of results that you get, things of that nature. But also, it's the same thing. Is that at the end of the day, it's you're living with yourself, with your own energy. You're deciding who you're associating with and communicating with, and it is dangerous to believe that someone outside of you is going to come back and solve everything for you, including all of your karma, all the things that you're responsible for because you did them. And I say you, I mean, I include myself. I'll put myself
Mm-hmm.
first on the list if that makes people feel more comfortable. I'm not exempt from that, certainly not. But I don't want someone else to take the heat for what I did. It's me. I did it. That to me, that's a sign of maturity. It's that you accept responsibility for the good things and the bad things that happen, and you try to rectify the things that are not so good necessarily. So, for instance, if there is a figure that comes back, I still want to address maybe my shortcomings myself because I did it. So it's not escape. You don't want to put it on someone else, even if that person is willing to help you. Actually, if the person who's come supposedly that would come for the second coming, if they're truly an ascended figure, they give you the option. They say, you know what, I can help you maybe to this much extent. Maybe I can't help you fully. I'll help you as much as I can, but you still need to pay your karma. You still need to set the rights that you did. Set the wrongs that you did right, and level the balance. Because you don't move on spiritually if you have a negative karmic debt. That is, in my belief, a universal law. There's a one. At some point there's a 1-for-1, if not a 10 to 1, depending on what the grievance might be. But yeah, I agree with that, Karen. It's like if that happens, especially if it's a good event, I definitely will embrace it. But in the meantime, I have things I need to work on personally, and that is taking precedence. And I'm not. Here's the key factors. I'm not waiting for an outside event to occur. I'm taking it today, and every day I wake up, and I'm doing the best that I can for my own advancement. And then when that event does come, if it does come, then it hopefully will just enhance the process that I'm already going through with my own spirituality. I'm not asking anyone to take what I did on themselves. I don't even think that's fair or right or even karmically fair or anything of that nature. So, but I encourage people to believe what you're going to believe, but just be open to people, and you don't have to believe what they're saying. But that's how we learn and how we grow, is by listening and asking questions, and also giving your opinion on things. And then, what's amazing is that at the end of that conversation, you can still be civil with the person, and you can just say, I don't really agree with you, but I really appreciate your time. This was really nice. And there's no reason it can't be a good experience.
Mm-hmm. Well said. Very well said. So so please do leave us comments if there's particular subjects you'd like us to delve into. Otherwise, we will be back probably, I don't know, in a few weeks, depends. As Dave and I have already said, he's traveling, doing research right now. And so it's a little more difficult to do a regular show. But coming up in the fall, we will be hopefully doing at least one show a month where Dave and I are teaching our perspectives on a single subject. And also we'll have some guests and include them in the conversation, and it should be quite interesting. So I'm hoping that you will share this video with your friends and your family, like it, subscribe to both of our YouTube channels, and I guess that's it for today. Do you have any last minute thoughts, Dave, before we go?
Yeah, sounds great, Karen. I mean, I'm really excited about continuing conversation. It's also nice to have guests on too, and to see what their perspectives are, and how it can even help us and viewers to enhance what we believe and the path that we're taking. It's always really exciting to have a guest too. Yeah, and the other thing, if me or Karen can provide any services for you, don't hesitate to reach out. I think we have links probably below the video, right, Karen, and the commercial as well. That would, we'd really appreciate that. And also, I'll speak for myself. I think Karen's probably on the same page, but it's really important that what I've been able to discover and develop, that it's not squandered. So I want to help people. I want people to be involved. I want people to leave comments. I want people, if you want, even if you want to be on the show or you have a suggestion for a guest, any of these things, we're all a part of the conversation together. And I want it to feel comfortable. I hope people feel that. And I'm excited for the future and our conversations and guests for sure. So thank you guys for watching. I really appreciate it. I hope you enjoy some of the greenery. I haven't had that before in any of my shows. I am on the road, like Karen said. I'll be done at the end of August, and I'll be back to a more predictable schedule, and we can start to have some guests and things like that. But please let us know, guys, what you think, and if you want some services, reach out to me or Karen.
Absolutely, Dave. Thank you so much. And thank you, everybody, for joining us on Aliens and Astrology, and we'll see you soon.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for joining Dave and I for the Aliens and Astrology show. Become the change you want to see in the world. Subscribe to our YouTube channels, click the like button, and share this show with your friends. Check out Karen's website at KarenHoltonHealthCoach.com. All the links will be in the description box below. Until the next time, keep up the good work.
Well, you challenge my perception. I shift uneasily as I try to justify how I value your suggestions. Ideas full of life when I'm empty of my own. And 5 minutes before I was okay, now the curtain drops to the floor. Leaves me weak and begging for more. When I think I get it, it flutters and vanishes away.